Thank you, Claudia. The next topic for our discussion is genome editing, and I'm not certainly making any presentation on genome editing, but because the last thing that has been said is concrete action, before introducing the two speakers, one of the additional elements of having citizens active and proposing and criticizing what institutions are doing or not doing, and I speak this of political personal experience, it's civil disobedience or direct participation. And sometimes you can also try and disobey a law on very complex, if not complicated issues. And certainly genome editing on plants has been one of the issues on which, with Marco Cappato and other people, also here in Brussels, we have organized, if you want, a silly thing. We said, okay, people have been studying rice, which has been edited in its genes, but because of a series of problems that we'll address by our speakers, and in particular the decision taken by the European Court of Justice a year ago, research cannot go on because the additional burdens had been put on this technology. So you know what? We eat the product of research on a public square, inviting the police to come assist and confiscate, if you want, the product that we're eating. We did it 3 times in Italy, which is a country that doesn't have a very good tradition in terms of the rule of law, so nothing happened. The first time we did it in front of the Chamber of Deputies, the police wanted to test and taste personally the rice salad that I had prepared. And not because we're friends, but because they wanted really to see what was the difference in taste. We did it again in front of the University in Milan, and the video that was shot by Repubblica.it, which is one of the most famous newspapers we have online in Italy, went viral in some parts of Europe. And so some people said, oh, this is a very interesting idea. Why don't we do it again? But before doing that, and this is why we're very happy to have with us today Dr. Oana Dima, who's from the VIB in Ghent, and she's in particular involved in the Center for Plant System Biology, which is a center that deals with biotechnology. We have to put together they started a position paper to put together all the research institutes to say, look, a decision has been taken by judges without any consultation with the scientific community. Not only that, the European scientific mechanism which exists, even if it's a group of people that from time to time receive a phone call, say, oh, what do you think about this? And they adopted the paper 3 months after the decision. So what is the point in having a lot of competence and expertise and not using it before, but perhaps having it shared as a very niche kind of debate right after? So we decided to have an extra snack, CRISPR snack here in Brussels, and we did it in a very sunny but chilly day in March this year. And finally, the Federal Agency for Food Security came and confiscated the rice we ate. Marco and I have been interrogated for only 3 hours by these people, in French, I should say, so that made it a little more complicated to share our arguments. Now, yeah, of course, I was going to say that. And they fined us 500 euros, not because they found that the rice we had eaten was in fact the rice we said it was, because they said unless we have half a kilo of rice, we cannot test what kind of rice that is, which is a silly answer, and I see people smiling and laughing, so that's an unscientific answer. So they fined us because we did something that they told us at the very last moment not to do, which is do not distribute this rice to people that don't know what kind of rice it is. And we had distributed other T-shirts beforehand to the people that had been selected to eat the rice, because you have also to know that people that are participating gave you the informed consent. And these are people that study these things on a daily basis. So end of story. We sent a letter criticizing their decision. They said no, replying that you disobeyed an order. And so in the end, we paid the fine. But this is not the end of the story. The end of the story will be both technical, scientific, and legal, and one day also perhaps civil disobediently reorganized. So the genome editing panel now will hear from Dr. Oana Dima and later on from Professor Klaus Ammann. Who wants to go first? Oana, you? Okay, good. Thank you.
So
You have
maybe
Okay, well, everybody has slides.
okay, and here I can change it. Okay, perfect. So, thank you, Marco, for this introduction. Thank you also for mentioning before that about the three pillars, about the freedom of research, about being able to share the knowledge, and also to be able to enjoy the technique that the research finally develops. So based on that, I would like to present you now why innovation in crops matters. So my name is Oana Dima. I first came to Belgium as an Erasmus student, when I was fascinated by plant biology and biotechnology and innovative techniques that we can use to basically feed the planet. And today, as a science policy manager for VIB, Flemish Institute of Biotechnology, Plant Systems Biology, I would like to share this passion with you and present the potential of genome editing for the European agriculture and for innovation in crop production. So before I do that, I would like to stop for a moment on the term the innovation in the European agriculture. I sense that innovation in the European agriculture is much slower than the innovation in other areas of our lives. And coming to the agriculture, the last innovative technology that we heard of is precision agriculture. So in precision agriculture, we use drones and automatized systems. And it is a great technique, however, it has many limitations. For example, we are still dependent on chemicals there. So we have in hands a technology which has been recently developed. It's an innovative technology. It's a genome editing with CRISPR. And what is this CRISPR? You can think of a CRISPR as a find and replace tool. So throughout the millions and millions of pages of DNA, we can search for a specific location, as you can see here, and target and change that DNA, as shown here, as this particular A letter in green can be changed to a G letter. And this, when that happens, also the characteristics of the plant can change. So, for example, this plant is now resistant to a certain disease. How great is that? So, with this technology is very precise and fast. And now it is feasible to obtain the desired plant variety or trait in only 1 or 2 generations of a plant. And this enables us to adopt crops to rapid changing conditions, for example, caused by climate change. Climate crisis is upon us, and its impacts are getting more severe with each passing year. And we must invest in a massive effort to adapt to conditions that are now inevitable, like higher temperatures, longer periods of droughts, and more unpredictable rainfall. So in in the context of recent hot summers that occurred in Europe and how this is affecting our water consumption and crop yield, drought resistance is an important trait that we are looking for, and with CRISPR we can obtain it. Another example is canola. So here during the mechanical harvest we lose a lot of seeds. Why? Because they are a little bit loosely attached to the system that they are that they are in. So with CRISPR we can attach the seeds better to the silic, so we don't use it, so we don't lose so much of them during the harvest, meaning that we can obtain more yield. And another example that I would like to share here is grape wine. So even though I currently live in Belgium, I prefer wine over beer. And as many Italians here, I think you can you share my preference. So, however, only if it's Italian. Okay. So also in Italy, the grape wine is susceptible to a fungus called botrytis, and because of that, we are dependent on chemicals such as fungicides or copper sulfate to minimize this infection of grapes. So you will not be surprised if I say that with CRISPR, we can make these grape wines less susceptible to the to this fungi, meaning that we would use less chemicals to protect our grapes, meaning it's better for the environment and healthier for us. And with this example also, I would like to tell you that different diseases will start to occur in regions of Europe where they not occur before because of the rising temperature, because of the changing temperature and changing humidity. However, Europe is blocking this innovation. In July 2018, the European Court of Justice, as Marco already mentioned, ruled, and here I would like to say that this is the interpretation of the majority of the European scientists. The court ruled that organisms obtained by modern forms of mutagenesis, such as CRISPR, are not exempt from the European GMO legislation. What does it mean? Is that these organisms obtained by genome editing would be treated and undergo the same legislatory procedure as GMOs. In the same time, other countries, I dare to say other continents, are choosing not to put these agricultural crops under such stringent legislation. So Europe is lagging behind. So as a response to this ruling, with the initiative of VIB and Plant Systems Biology Center, we managed to unite the European research community, and we raised the concerns on the implication of this ruling on the European agriculture. And on the slide you can see the logos of the European research institutes and associations that support our statement. So you heard the story about consuming CRISPR rice. Besides the research community, also young generation of scientists raised their voice in different initiatives, and one of them being Give CRISPR a Chance event. You can see here even the one of the things that we printed during that time. So this Give CRISPR a Chance event was organized with big support of Science for Democracy And here, young researchers from Belgium consumed CRISPR rice pudding in front of the European Parliament to raise awareness for the new technologies. Another example of the reaction of for this court ruling and on the situation in genome editing in European agriculture were these master students who gathered in Wageningen. And funny thing, master students are doing the job that actually Europe should be doing. So they raised this European Citizens Initiative and presented a proposal to European Commission in order to change the existing legislation. So how can you support this initiative? How can you make a difference in the European agriculture? Is you can enter their website and give your vote for it. So hopefully in this way we could be heard. And with the slides, I would like to thank the organizers for having me here, the Eumans and Science for Democracy. And I will be happy to take any questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you. You can clap your hands. Thank you. Thank you,
Yes,
Oana.
you can.
The young students that you mentioned before were also instrumental in organizing the entire thing, because in order to have a public demonstration in Brussels, you need at least 3 types of permits coming from a variety of institutions. So we got the last one a few hours before we actually went on the public street. So, but I think I will keep questions after the next presentation from Professor Klaus Ammann. Si vous voulez, vous pouvez parler en français aussi. No, okay, very well. You have the floor.
Je préfère l'anglais pour
Okay. Très bien.
les conférences.
One.
Well, I must first say I have never felt so much at home in a new environment and a new conference before in my life. And all the things you have said make my contribution futile. I try my best because I will talk not about gene editing. There was a misunderstanding that I should talk more on basic things on the discourse. But I will skip a few slides. Don't worry. You will see them on the screen on the website. And also you have to know that my slides are always overloaded with scientific presentations. And you can click to all the things I have said, whether good or bad, and you can write me if I was wrong. Anyway, science-based view of knowledge. This is my first topic, but that's going quickly away. Be careful about publications. All the printed stuff you see is at least half of it is blunt lie and not really good science. The first thing you have to check is, are there references based on data which are real in our life? If not, then skip it. So it's not easy. I thought it's becoming much easier in the time of internet. First, I had to go every week to the university library. Now I can load down thousands of slides and journals. I have 700 databases on EndNote, and the best ones have more than 20,000 references. So I was told by many specialists that I have the largest collection on literature reference in the world, bigger than OECD and EU together. Anyway, new things are coming up. Did you know that actually pancreatic cancer can be cured within a few years from now? It's a breakthrough, but nothing in the newspapers, nothing. Or did you know that coffee is more toxic than glyphosate? Oh, God. Huh? I drank a little bit of glyphosate, the concentration they applied to the field, not the concentrated one. And I survived. I'm still here and healthy and mean. And glyphosate hysteria, I don't participate. But, there is a big but, if glyphosate is just there to promote an unhealthy, strong monoculture agriculture, then I am against. But used in a sensible way, it's the best herbicide we have today. Did you know that there is no genetic basis for the people of the Jews? Nothing. Here you see the map. I don't talk about that. But a lot of anti-Semite people think it's something genetic in there, you know, which is just silly. Did you know that you touch every day transgenic material by the Euronotes? Huh? They are mostly made out of transgenic cotton. And we have interrogated the European Bank, and they finally came out and said, well, yeah, you might be right. Anyway, one of the best symbols of climate change promoters is the ice bear standing on a very lonely ice island and having hunger. The contrary is true. There is a good paper published from Crockford, which shows that most of the Arctic populations are healthy and thriving, except one in Balfour there. But the rest is okay. And you have to know that genetically the ice bear is very close to the brown bear, and they can adapt to new fields of feeding. No problem. But no, it's the symbol of climate change. And this is just a lie. Sorry, it's a lie. The view of the earth, well, it might be wrong. The latest sensation is that they have found and clearly defined and verified that there are sugar molecules in an extraterrestrial meteorite. Hey, do we have to think about life on in other universes? Yes, it's quite logic. It's nonsense to say no. It makes a lot of sense to say yes, and here we have a proof. A near proof. There must be more rationality in the debate. The Venn diagram, you can study that. It's just a collection of evil thought and publications. And the world through the internet is inundated by this false news. It's just crazy. And did you know, well, in climate change, I am also an advocate. We must do something about climate change, but we should not exaggerate. Inundation is not a problem everywhere. It's just, we have to differentiate and not just to throw out primitive slogans. The earth will, New York will be inundated and so on. It's just bare nonsense. But there are countries where there is some threat about inundation, for sure. The CO2. Most people think nowadays CO2 is a toxic substance. What an outrageous misunderstanding. We all need CO2. But if it's too much, if it affects the climate, then we have to change it. But it's not as bad as we think. Look at the map, or at the curve. But of course you have to say in most of the times shown here, human beings were not existing yet. So the warming was there, but humans did not suffer. About sea level change. Everybody thinks, yes, it's mounting, and we have melting glaciers, we have melting Antarctic ice. Yes, that's true, but if you go to the hard data, the situation is not so absolutely clear. There is still some hope, and we still have some time to reduce the effects of ice melting. In Switzerland, we had time 6,000–7,000 years ago, where there were trees growing in the neighborhood of the glaciers, and they were zero. But of course, there was no human population at that time. But it happened before. It's not the world catastrophe, and we will survive it. We will find ways and means to change it, the negative situation. Help through factual progress. You work on this, but I put together a little collection, and here is the future development in the green. We will have alternative products and ways of energy production in the future, no doubt. Human history has shown that innovation is happening every day, and we will have success about that. For instance, windmills should be replaced by this vortex system, and it's more efficient, as you can see, the blue line. The vortex is less killing birds and less difficult to construct. It's still there in the landscape, of course, but it's much more efficient. So we should replace them anyway, these windmills. This is outdated. But the 3-in-1 reactor could eventually replace plants used to produce ammonia. So we have possibilities for new factories, putting together processes for agriculture in a much better and more efficient way, and doing less environmental damage. Batteries, oh God. Everybody talks about electric cars to be better because they don't have an exhaust and so on. But if you calculate the amount of energy and the waste which is used, which is caused by the new batteries, then help you God. Huh? It's just as...
No God, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, that comes from an Italian. I have been in a 1-week conference in the Vatican inside the Vatican, and I got to know some cardinals which are very progressive thinking. But that's not the image of the Protestants in Germany. Anyway, and new materials are developed for better taking care of the sun energy, much better. So, and it is always literature there. And roofs can be covered by solar energy, little machines. And that's the future, you know. So we don't need outdated forms of energy production, like, for instance, burning the oil, which is just a silly thing to do, you know. Oil is such a valuable material. Transformative device generates energy from the cold night sky. To hell, huh? It's true. It has been proven experimentally. So we just have to use it, huh? And then we have enough energy, maybe too much. That's another problem. But we can produce it in a much more environmental friendly way. That's the message. Bacteria can produce energy. It's all written down there with good publications. There are two centers doing that. Climate Breakthrough, Israeli scientists engineer bacteria to eat CO2. Ooh, huh? Not bad. Or you can use the temperature of your body to produce enough energy for the watches. You don't need to put in these tiny little toxic things anymore. It's the body warmth which will keep your watch running. And there are many other things. I could go on and on and on. I just take a few juicy ones. But then comes also something in which comes from my real biological father. He was a philosopher and the reinventor of harmonics, Hans Kaiser. He never told me that he is my father, but he was a wonderful uncle. So actually I had two fathers. I don't complain. Anyway, he wrote Harmonia Plantarum, and we still have not really disentangled the miracles of these harmonic proportions, why they are really there. I think there is a mystery. I have studied harmonics because of my real father, and I'm continuing to do that. But actually, it's still an open field. It's not only the densest package of organs. It's much more behind. Now, how can we change people's minds? Here I'm telling you something which is also coming at the moment still independently. We should actually, I just shorten up, we should respect different kinds of knowledge. We should have the scientific knowledge, the ontic knowledge, that's what planners are thinking in, the traditional knowledge, farmers. Why to hell is it still possible in Brussels and in Switzerland to have big conferences on agriculture and practically no farmers are invited? This is just incredible, you know. How stupid are we actually? Huh? And then structural knowledge and instrumental knowledge, I'm not going to talk about that. But the zero hypothesis is very important in these debates. There is no prejudgment. There is no, I have a scientific knowledge, so I know much better than you what to do, and you have to follow my orders indirectly. If I do it a bit more diplomatically, you will not even notice it. But actually, the zero hypothesis is the most difficult thing about the modern discourse. That takes at least 1 year to come together and to formulate this. And but I see that you are advanced in these matters, and I can only learn and help how to do it also in a theoretical way. You see here some literature, discourse and professional discourse with these two principles. There are much more such principles, need to be obeyed to really come to practical outcomes. And it needs to be open. I could talk 1 hour about that, but I should finish. Anyway, my wife, she's a philosopher from Bulgaria, and she got me in contact with all those big shots on planning. And that's my caricature on the debates today. From a friend from Bulgaria, a good caricaturist. 3 slides about where you can get information. Cosmic and PRI has a lively website about transgenics and so on. And here, knowledge verified by many independent experts. There you also can get some really intelligent answers. I'm sure there are more websites like that, but that's the ones I know. And the internet is not only a huge mass of misinterpretation, but it's also a big help today, and we should use it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Professor. You can turn off the microphone, please, because I think it... Is there any question for our 2 panelists? Claudia? Sure.
Well, I found both presentations extremely interesting. I don't know whether I will be able to formulate a question to the second presenter. Actually, maybe it's more a comment, but I would like to have your ideas about it. Well, you started your contribution by saying that you really felt at home today, and I have to say that I really felt very happy while listening to your presentation, because I think you nailed on a real difficulty, which is this constant polarization of the public debate into believers and deniers of something. So there's nothing in between. Either the science is right and someone else is wrong, or the, let's say, ordinary people are right and the science is wrong. So there is always a polarization. Yeah, and we also here in Science for Democracy and Humans have had discussions about that, obviously with all the constraints given by the fact that we are organizations that try to bring ideas and initiatives forward. So we are not a scientific organization, and we don't want to be that. My comment is the following. In my opinion, it's very easy to say that science is not understood, or that facts are not understood, and that knowledge, the notion of knowledge, is not easy to grasp. What I find, though, most concerning is what, and here I would like to have your feedback about, is what I think happens in contemporary academia, which is this sort of mainstream thinking that the scientists themselves bring forward. An example of this is the fact that 2 to 3 years ago, if there are colleagues here in the room, they would ring the bell. There was a scientific journal established in the UK whose title is The Journal of Controversial Ideas. So it's a journal, a peer-reviewed scientific journal, which was created by scientists to enable their peer scientists to publish anonymously in such a way to be able not to bias the peer review process and to be able to publish indeed controversial ideas, which in science today, especially in the social sciences, is very, very difficult. So what I want to emphasize with this comment is that also scientists have a responsibility in kind of avoiding for career making, for getting funds at grants competitions and etc., to be courageous in times and just to state the facts the way they are. What would you say about that?
Peer review, I have written some 30 pages about it, and I have a huge bibliography on peer review, 8,000 references, and it's a big problem. But on the other hand, I have to be honest enough to say I cannot present an outright better solution. It's a process, and it needs a movement from both sides to come into a discourse, in a professional discourse. That was the main topic of my and I can say peer review as it is handled by some top science papers can be criticized, but on the other hand, For instance, I am more on the side of all reviewers should be named and should be open. But that causes a disadvantage that some reviewers are then, for friendship reason or collegiality, not saying the truth as they would like to say. See, if it's anonymous, so it shows that peer review by itself is a very controversial matter. And personally, I cannot say, here is the solution.
No, exactly. I was going to say that. I was going to close because we have a next panel of 4 speakers, but Oana will also be around for questions. I think also emails will be provided for more technical questions, and I guess that there's a few. But again, gross scientific progress is one of the ECIs that we are promoting and supporting, and on the website you have all the technical details on what this particular ECI is asking. And thank you both. And